All right, it looks like we are live.
All right, so it is 5:33. So we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. I think we definitely have every member. Do we have every member? That's been a while since we had every member. So great, that's awesome. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Or Shannon, is there anything that we need to change on the agenda, or are we good?
No, and I purposely left the agenda a little bit broad, particularly under item 5A, because I think we have kind of a handful of things that we need to discuss with regard to the budget. And that's the main purpose of this meeting, is just talk about FY20 and 21 budgeting.
Okay, great. Assuming no one else has any changes that you'd like to make to the agenda, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve.
It's been moved by Mark and seconded by Tommy. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We do not have any minutes from March, and of course, we did not meet in April. So we can just hop right into the FY20 annual audit contract.
Yes. So this was in your packet. It's a very long document. The first part of it is a letter to the board, and let's see if I can share my screen. The town is going with a different auditing firm. It's Cherry, I think it's Beckart. We've had Dixon Hughes for a number of years, but it's nice to kind of, put that contract out and get your responses, and also get some different eyes on your numbers and your accounting and everything. It's going to be largely the same. I anticipate their report may look a little bit different, so we get that yearly auditor's report, but it'll be the same thing. It'll say, how much money we spent for the fiscal year, what we have in fund reserves, and then they'll do any auditing to make sure that the receipts and the charges match up. Were there any questions on this?
Shannon, just a quick question, just because this is my first time around, but so this falls under the town's annual audit, but our board, as well as maybe other boards, pitch in a certain amount to go toward the audit?
No, so the town has its own audit. The town board and the town is audited through the general fund. The tourism board has its own audit of the food and beverage tax revenue fund. And then the Tourism Development Authority has its own audit of the occupancy tax fund.
Okay.
So we all.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
And the reason is because it's a tax revenue that we collect. So those are the only three audits that happen. Like the Historic District Commission, for example, doesn't get an audit because they don't bring in revenue.
Okay, gotcha, thanks.
Any other questions? Is there anything else you'd like to highlight, Shannon? I guess there's nothing that we necessarily need to. Do we need a motion to approve this and for me to sign it?
Yes, because there is an expenditure associated with it. It's within the budgeted amount for FY20 and 21.
Okay, great. Any other questions that folks have about this? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the audit contract and authorize me to sign for the tourism board.
Move to approve.
It's been moved by Kim. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been seconded, I think, by both Kathleen and Barney. So if there's no further discussion, all those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we'll approve that contract. And Shannon will, if you can just leave the contract in the commissioner's office, and I'll come by tomorrow and sign it.
Okay.
Let's see, FY budget and revenue projections. This is going to be an interesting one, I'm sure. So,
well, I also want to preface this by saying that this is an imperfect guess, because we still kind of don't know when we're reopening and if our food and beverage, or, food service establishments reopen, what that looks like. So like I said, it's kind of a guess. Let me get that open and screen share that as well. Can you all see that?
Yep.
So basically, we get these food and beverage revenues in arrears. So we get them about 2 months behind. So for March, I won't have those numbers until probably the end of May. Right now, I'm spitballing. I'm guessing maybe we'll get half of March. We may get 0 of March. April, May, June too. I'm just kind of took it down by a considerable percentage. And so what we're looking at for FY20 is a potential shortfall. Now, as you all know, we do have a very healthy fund balance. And the reason that we have a healthy fund balance is in case something like this were to happen. I think when we were planning for this in previous years, we thought maybe a fire or a tornado or some kind of a natural disaster. But this is, where we're at, where we have most, if not all of our food service related businesses closed or partially closed for a long time. So for March, April, potentially into May and June, Governor Cooper had a press conference and kind of has outlined that 3-phase plan, but we don't exactly know what that's going to look like. So for the remaining fiscal year, I went ahead and went in and tried to cut some things, and I'm trying to pull that document back up, forgive me. And I just wanted to make you aware, you all see this new document, the budget document. So I highlighted in red the things that I was planning to cut. Some of them are kind of no-brainers. For example, the travel and training, we didn't end up going to visit NC, and they did refund everything. So I dropped that down to 0. We had $2,000 budgeted for tourism plan implementation projects that we hadn't spent yet, that were planned for the spring, that I zeroed out. And then the kiosk signs at the visitor center in Calvin Street, the new entrance to Riverwalk, we had about $20,000 in there that I zeroed out. And then we had about $1,400 left in unassigned special projects and partnership monies that I zeroed out. As I'm basically trying to get this operational subtotal down as low as possible, so that when we end the fiscal year, that's less money that we have to pull from fund balance to basically make sure that we can meet all of our operations for this year. Did anyone have any questions, comments, concerns?
Nope. They seem like the right things to me.
I was muted. Do we need to approve these budget changes?
Yes.
Okay. If no one else has any questions or anything like that, I'd entertain a motion to approve the adjusted budget for FY20.
I'll move to
approve the, go ahead.
That's fine. Whoever wants to take.
Well, let's do this. Kathleen moved and Tommy seconded. How about that?
That's fine.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the budget has been amended. It's a lot easier when you have a paper agenda. Okay, updated draft FY21 budget.
Okay. So this is a little bit of a harder conversation because the budget that we were working with previously is gonna change too. I'm gonna screen share that. Do you all find the screen share helpful?
Yes.
I think so, yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
I don't want to keep doing this. It's kind of a lot of work if it's not helpful for anyone.
Good.
Well, people watching on the live stream would be able to see fully what we're.
Follow along. Yeah, that's kind of like why I like doing the projecting of this stuff while we're talking about it in our meetings too. Okay, can everyone see Tourism Board FY21 budgets?
Yeah.
Kind of highlighted. Okay, so yeah, first I have the appropriation. I'm just plugged in 100. I don't know how short we're going to be for March, April, May, and June. The guess. I did drop our projected revenues down by about 20%, down to 300,000. Again, it's all kind of a guessing game, and anticipating that we'll need at least almost $40,000 in fund balance to go ahead and keep the lights on, essentially. Travel and training, I don't know if we want to cut that or keep it. Do we want to go line by line and kind of decide on these, Matt, or have conversation on these?
Let's start for the first one, and we'll just have everyone's feedback.
Before we, is it possible to give us a target? I mean, do you have a sense of like a total number that we need to remove?
As much as possible.
So like,
I really don't, because I really don't know what I don't know. Like if we end up losing a lot of our food and beverage businesses, and those spaces are empty for a while, and that zeroes out revenue, I really don't. I think right now I'm just trying to work through cutting, and I'll have a better idea of that for our June meeting once I kind of see what March looks like, because then I'll have a baseline of like, okay, well, here was March where our restaurants were only open for about a week and a half. But I think I think it would be good to cut where we can, and then we can always program this back in
Right.
July or August when I've got those full numbers from March, April, May, and June, if that makes sense.
Shannon, the one of the highlighted spots, well, the one under contracts, the two contract services, they're sort of blurring out a little bit on your screen share.
Yeah, so the Alliance for Historic Hillsborough, that's kind of blurred out. That's 200,000. Town of Hillsborough, that's blurred out. That's $37,409.
Okay, same as what we got in the.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Let me.
It's probably just a screen share issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of reduced. Everything's reduced except for a couple things, and that's the town of Hillsborough, which is up 33.5%. And then, of course, and then the Arts Council, Museum, and Burwell School, which I think was a Herculean effort. Congrats on those numbers. And then down to the other grant section.
Yeah, so I highlighted the stuff that we may be able to find savings from or reduce the cost of.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can go into travel and training and say, okay, well, until we have better numbers, we don't anticipate sending anyone to any travel and training. And again, we can add this back in. Alliance for Historic Hillsborough, we can talk to Sarah and say, Sarah, is there anything, I mean, it's a pretty bare bones budget. Is there anything that we could cut there for some cost savings? I highlighted the town of Hillsborough contract just because the other ones are highlighted, and I don't think it would be fair to not highlight it. But we were in negotiations with the town of Hillsborough to reevaluate that contract for your personnel costs. And the town of Hillsborough basically for the duration of this contract has been absorbing market pay increases. So this 28,000 has been flat. And so that hasn't increased over the years, despite cost of living increases. So that is an increase there. And then Arts Council, the museum, and the Burwell School, those numbers are plugged in, just holding the same as FY20. This FY20 estimate doesn't include third and fourth quarter payments.
Okay.
Or no, wait, no, it does. That 13,756 is reduced because the Arts Council wasn't able to have handmade parade. They pushed it.
So here's another newbie question, so bear with me. The 6% holdback for the town admin stuff. So we're footing the bill for our audit and for the attorney fees, and just wondering, that amount is equivalent to, for example, what we're awarding, say, the Arts Council for fiscal year 21. So just as a newbie, wondering, $20,000 for admin on the town side?
Yes, so that's in the enabling legislation. It is a fixed amount that the town charges to collect the food and beverage tax and to process those payments, to send out late notices, that kind of thing. The staff time.
Okay. Memory lapse then. I thought it was a smaller percentage. Thanks for that.
It's a little bit smaller for occupancy tax. I think it's 3 for occupancy tax. Yeah, and that number's probably grown a lot as the revenues have grown.
So Shannon, what I think would be good is for the FY20 budget, I agree on the training piece. I think if this occurs next year, it'll definitely be needed, but we won't have to be making those decisions until a very long time from now, whether or not we'll go to the NC 365 thing, since that's in March anyway. So I think we could go ahead and zero that out. I think that everything else makes sense based on what you've told us. Now, of course, maybe this is cart before the horse because we haven't talked about our grants yet that we have before us. But that is a smaller number than what we typically have have reserved, which is 25,000. Did you come to the 21,000? I didn't go back and look at adding up the 3 grant requests that we had and plugging.
What it is.
Okay.
It's if we were to fund all 3.
Okay.
They only total 21,000. They don't total the full 25,000 that we usually allocate for grants.
Okay. Got it. Any other questions or anything else that folks want to highlight, ask questions about, raise concerns about, change numbers?
And to be clear, you will see this again in June. We have to have a public hearing to adopt the budget. So this is just retooling the draft because it's going to have to look at least a little bit different to try and get these numbers down, so that we don't blow through our fund balance in FY20 and 21, and then we need it more in FY22 and we don't have any. Is kind of what I'm trying to avoid.
And also, just FYI, folks shouldn't really look at the FY22 and FY23 projections because
no, they're all messed up.
They're all messed up, and there's a good chance that our town budget won't. And we try and project out, year 2, year 3, and there's just too much volatility that we'll probably not be able to do that. So I wouldn't really pay attention to 22 and 23 projections right now. Great. So if there's nothing else, I think, Shannon, you've got good feedback for our public hearing and what folks are wanting, since we don't have, this isn't an action item, so we don't really need to adopt anything, correct?
No, it's more just guidance and where you all would like to see more cost savings. And for the grants, discussion. I think I have that highlighted. Did we want to try and keep grants funded in some way, shape, or form for 21?
I think let's talk about the grants, and then come back and maybe revise and use that feedback to revise that number.
Okay.
And also, I do have another question, because maybe I'm just very, very dense, but on the revenue side, where under fund balance appropriated for COVID, that's just reserving, earmarking some dollars for shortfall. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to
For
make sure.
FY20, that's just kind of a guess as to what we're going to need to put into that account at the end of the budget year in order to make sure that our expenditures do not exceed our revenue.
Okay, got it. You would think for someone who does accounting all day, every day, that would have, I wouldn't have had to, I wouldn't have been so dense on that.
No, I was kind of unclear on that too, Matt. I'm glad you asked.
So thank you.
Yeah, and my projection is, as far as fund balance, anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000. But like I said, without having March or April, I don't have any numbers. So I don't know what restaurants and bars are going to be able to pay their March food and beverage tax. If anybody is going to be able to do April. We're asking everybody to pay if they can.
Do you know?
Well, and also the other thing that I would say, and I'm not sure what the change has been, but I do know that there's been some interest talking with the legislature to see if certain types of businesses could keep their tax revenue, their sales tax that they would have ordinarily remitted to Department of Revenue. And I don't know how that would affect our food and beverage tax if that did become a thing. I heard it was a possibility or something that was being discussed, but I haven't heard anything since then. It's probably going to be more of a budget discussion when the legislature gets around to doing budget. But that's something else for us to consider and keep in mind, that what revenues we might get might be preempted by the legislature. Possibly.
So do we know, can you easily average like second quarter in previous years receipts for the tax? So we kind of maybe say, I mean, we know April is a wash. We know May is not sounding like it's going to bring any real potential for a lot of places. Likely June will be, a reduction of allowable access. So is that a figure we could grab and just sort of see best case scenario where only, or worst case scenario, however you want to look at it, but that, we know we're probably not going to be anywhere near. I just don't know what that number is normally, because I know there's a lot of ups and downs throughout the year with seasonal support. So
yeah, I used in that projection, so that chart that I showed with like the monthly the monthly food and beverage tax that we receive, like January, February, March, April, May, June, July.
Yeah.
Kind of using an average monthly of about 30,000. But I mean, I could come up with a more precise number for sure for Q3 and 4 and see what we usually pull in.
Let's see what you got. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. The other item that we need to discuss a little bit is funding the holiday parade and home tour advertising. That was something that we discussed at the end of our last meeting. The chamber kind of made the ask that they need financial help with pulling those events off. I was able, Kim got me some numbers, and Kim, I'm sorry, you'll have to refresh me because I think we had a phone conversation versus an email. I think you said it was about, was it 8,000?
I'd have to pull it up myself because you're talking about the parade. I think you're right.
Yeah, parade and then hometown holiday festival promotions.
Let me.
I think everything kind of went crazy about the time that we started sitting down to meet and talk more about that. So I don't think we've been so busy chasing, trying to support the businesses that I don't know that we were able to sit down and really hammer that out. But that's something else to think about as a budgetary consideration. I'll add it as a line item, probably under the CS other, and we can zero it for right now, but that's something that we're going to need to think about when we have our June public hearing for budget, is taking on that expense.
Are those numbers that we usually would have the opportunity to see in more detail, or?
Yeah, and you'll receive for the June meeting, before you're asked to make a decision on that, you'll receive more information about that for sure.
On the numbers of the specific event?
Yeah, the parade event and what that money is going towards.
So I just sent you back, Shannon, I pulled that email back up and I've just put it in the top of your inbox. So yeah, we can have a more specific proposal for the next meeting. I think, in my view, we've got a little bit of a challenge on several fronts right now as to what's really going to happen, depending upon how long we're closed, depending upon the mindset of the public and having people in their homes. So I don't know that, I have no idea right now how that's going to work. So.
Yeah, I was going to ask if we thought there was a decent, I mean, that's something the town's going to try to do regardless of circumstance, or, what's the probability that one or both of those things get put off, at least for this year?
So the town doesn't run the parade or the candlelight tour, that's run by the chamber. And so if the town were to say that they would not allow the gathering of those people, because it's a lot of people who come out for the parade, obviously that would mean we wouldn't run it. And if the candlelight tour, I can't get homes to agree that they want people walking through and seeing and touching, again, I can only do so much from my place here. It's almost like it's premature to go very far in this conversation at this point until we have a better sense of what's going to happen.
Right, and I think that it might make the most, I don't know if it makes the most sense in going ahead and earmarking the dollars. That way it's just already accounted for in the budget. And if it doesn't happen, we just do a budget amendment, or, because there is so much uncertainty, and if this virus ends up becoming, until we get a vaccine or a cure, a seasonal disease that tracks with or could track with the flu, there might not be much of anything like this later in the year. So I think it would be safer to at least do a perspective scope of work. If it ends up not occurring this year, then we have it split for FY22, and try and get that together and earmark some funds. That way we just kind of know what the budget situation would look like if we could move forward.
So, and I've just looked at the document that I sent in, and I think we had $7,100 in asked for parade support, and then $1,500 each for marketing of the candlelight tour and the Hillsborough Hometown Holiday Festival.
So that's about
close to 10.
10, yeah.
Yeah, and I just wanted this board to know, to not kind of forget about that, because we had that discussion at the meeting, the March meeting, right before everything started kind of going into a shutdown, stay-at-home order mode. So that is something that will, in addition to the contracts that this board already has, that was another kind of request that was out there that will have to be considered for 21.
So I think the only thing we hadn't discussed about under 5A is the funding of grants and standing contracts. What do you see on that, and what's your recommendations to us?
So the total ask is 21,000 for grants. The asks for from our contract partners were largely the same dollar amounts with slight increases. The last Friday's the Arts Council asked for about $1,000 additional dollars in order to offer buskers or like roaming performers. I think it's hard to say on that because I don't know what last Friday's is going to look like. I guess a lot of this is question marks. So that's a challenge. The other thing is with grants is the top scoring grant was the Art on the Hill event. And I've reached out to Katie Murray to see what the plan is for that. And I think there's still some question marks around that as well. So I think right now it's a lot of question marks. I'm hoping when we meet in June, I'll have a lot more answers and better numbers for you all. But I do want us to be keeping these things in mind that we may have to cut some things, maybe bring them back into the budget later. Unfortunately, like I said, I don't have a lot of great answers, but I did want to have this meeting and just kind of touch base on some of these things.
Yeah, so I've got a question on our current grants because it occurred to me that a week or so ago, we should have had last Friday, if I remember correctly, that starts in April. So what I guess it's a two-pronged question, because the way I look at it is, if you look at the governor's phases that he's put out, under the best circumstances, assuming that we hit all the social distancing guidelines and the numbers look good and everything is driven by that, we're looking at some sort of normalcy somewhere in like August, maybe September, right? So that's nearing the end of what we would normally be doing for last Friday. So that is a big question mark. Now, I know we send these checks quarterly, but how could we account for that moving forward for FY21? And then what about the contract obligations for FY20? I assume that all these organizations, some of whom don't have a lot of budget to begin with, that we're gonna, for circumstances beyond their control, hold them harmless, I guess.
Yeah, that's definitely a conversation that this board is going to have once the dust kind of settles and we see how long everybody was closed. That's a hard decision that's going to have to be made, is whether or not this board holds them harmless or requests all or a portion of the public funding back.
And I think it depends on what the funding was for. So for example, to Matt's point, for those funds that go toward operating to keep some of these tourism sites open, the museum, for example, and the Burrell School, that's one thing. And that's that's definitely a hold harmless conversation to have. Where you've got fee for service issues, for example, for performances for last Fridays, it would be really important to have Tori and the Arts Council there to find out, okay, if you can't hold this particular event and that artist isn't coming, how much of that fee is going to pay for an artist who's not coming versus, maybe they're not paying for that artist. So it's definitely a conversation to have, from that standpoint for those particular events, because the same amount of work from a staff standpoint goes into those events. But that's just the question to ask. If you're asking for a clawback on anything for money that's not being spent for an artist who's not showing up and they're not collecting the money. Does that make sense?
I mean, I think that there's a certain amount of, I have no idea who's paying, who has rent to pay, how much those rents are. Are they still paying payroll to their staff? Or did they furlough them? Are they collecting unemployment? Did they receive any PPP money, EIDL, anything? mean, you know, that's all things we don't know. So it makes it very difficult to know how to handle
Exactly.
the current situation. And yeah.
Well, I think these are questions that we can ask when our contract partners come in for the I won't say contract hearing, but Shannon, we would bring them in to just talk through the contract. So I think these are questions we could definitely ask then too.
Yeah, and so normally we would discuss grants and contracts in March or in April and May. And unfortunately, we've kind of lost those meetings. I thought that this format was probably not a great way to do those discussions, especially if we're able to meet in June, even with social distancing or with something in place where we're all 6 feet apart, at least to get us all together, and maybe not for the first meeting that we do, public meeting that we do virtually. So now that we've got a little bit more experience with this and kind of figured out the YouTube live thing, if we do have to meet virtually in June, like I said, I'm hoping we have some more answers. And if we need to have those contract partners on that call to have that discussion with them, that we could do so.
It feels like we have a lot of uncertainty, and so it's very difficult for us to make any decisions tonight. We will have more information in June. Likely we would have more information in June. But I would also submit that I sort of, you know, from talking with local businesses and a couple of surveys, you know, there's a lot of interest in how can the town, the tourism boards help us climb back out of this hole. And it feels like we should not approve anything until we know more. I mean, you might decide that this year we don't do grants and instead we are, you know, putting something back into economic development or tourism or what have you. And that's just, you know, my sideline thought there. But
Well, I mean, I think that's actually a good point. You know, I think keeping the 21,000, we have to pass a budget. But, you know, is it that we use the 21,000 for some way to promote tourism or, you know, draw people to Hillsborough when, you know, there's better social distancing guidelines or, you know, something along those lines. You know, especially since one of the 3 grant requests that we got was for an event that may or may not happen. The other one of the 3 grants, when I was scoring them, I was like, I don't know how feasible an in-person event's going to be this year. And the other one was for a reprinting of something that's already been done. You know, so, you know, depending on how we all come to those conclusions, you know, we might have more money in the grants category to repurpose for something.
I'm going to throw this out here way out in left field, but I mean, one of the best things that could help reopen and help encourage visitation would be to get, you know, a long way down the path to everybody having some access to testing here in Hillsborough. Are we allowed to do anything about spending dollars towards that?
Spending dollars towards
test kits so you could test for immunities or antibodies or what have you?
that.
I'd have to ask Bob Hornick, the attorney, on that, just because the enabling legislation is specific in the use of the funds and it generally references tourism and tourism marketing and tourism programming.
Yeah, I'm suggesting it be couched under the fact that nobody's going to come out and play. And, you know, we get more testing in place. So.
That is an interesting question. I know that the tourism TDA and the tourism group up in Asheville have explored interesting ways to use their tourism dollars to offset some of the negative impacts that tourism brings, which there are some, a lot actually in Asheville. So I think that is a good question to ask Bob. I don't think, personally speaking, we don't have a health and human services component to Hillsborough. That's a county function. That might be a discussion that the mayor needs to have with Penny Rich and some other folks about how we could, you know, fund or get testing kits without using tourism dollars, even if Bob said, you know, that's something that's that's possible, that's a permissible expense. So, but I hear you, because I think that's definitely going to be part of opening and being able to track, who's asymptomatic and who has the immunities or the antibodies. But there's also some research out there that says maybe after you've gotten it or exposed to it doesn't mean you can't get it again. So so much uncertainty. Not how I thought it's not the 2020 I thought we'd have so far, that's for sure.
So kind of a newbie question along those lines. What if we kind of reserve funds to do something later, kind of comes up ad hoc? How does that happen? Is that something we put together? We just hoping somebody walks in with a great idea? It seems a little shaky to me to be kind of holding out hope that something great walks in through the door. I don't know.
We would do a budget amendment.
Well, I understand the mechanism. I'm just wondering what's the likelihood of something worth doing appearing.
I mean, I would say it's pretty good. We've got a pretty creative community. We've got a lot of people, historic sites that band together and do things. The chamber does a lot. The Arts Council does a lot. I mean, I
think we have that special projects fund that we frequently find we use. So you'd like that, wouldn't it?
I also wanted to add, there's a whole lot of creativity with virtual tours, both in public sites as well as come and experience our community, without having to go in someplace and be part of a crowd. So there's that. And then the Art on the Hill grant proposal, that is, they're planning for that in a couple of years. So, isn't that
July, a year from now?
Yeah, and a lot can happen between now and then. And again, if something happens or doesn't go in the positive direction that we're all hoping, then we can retool and refigure and put that money back into the pipeline for later. And I think we also have to be strategic in keeping our momentum going. If you look at the numbers, until March, we were way ahead of the curve. I mean, things were jamming, and we've got this big reserve. And and bear with me, but this is what it was for. And while we need all hands on deck, I think we need to keep a certain amount of momentum going, so that when things do head in a positive direction, health-wise, we're ready to fling open the doors. We've already got the marketing out there. We've got an active marketing program now. That's what the Alliance is doing. And we should be looking at what the current marketing plan is and those advertising contracts, where it's going, and do we need to swivel a little bit? And we're going to have to bring them into the discussion for that. And if we need to supplement with additional marketing, as Matt suggested, then we can reformulate that, I suppose.
Yeah, and Sarah and I have some marketing updates in item 6. Which we can go into if there's no other discussion.
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
So 6A is all of our reports. Sarah and I and Cole, who's the new communications person over at the Visitor Center, had a Zoom meeting, and we kind of strategized some messaging surrounding when we can open back up and how we are going to encourage people to come back in. Mainly, Kathleen, to your point, focusing on various things that you can do while still social distancing, whether that be a self-guided tour, whether it be a hike, river walk. We've got a lot of outdoor opportunities, even to view and learn things from our historic sites. And I think we also kind of came up with a tagline that we were kind of kicking around that would call back to Hillsborough being a very calm, relaxing. It's on the Eno River. It's a small town. And so trying to encourage people to do day tripping here in a safe way. Sarah, do you want to talk more about Cole? I know we were lucky to be able to bring him on.
The timing was really perfect on his hire, and I'm so thankful that we were able to get him on board. Cole, his name is Cole Stanley, and he's our communications coordinator. He's part-time, and he's got a journalism background, which is excellent. So he's got that experience that he's, bringing to the table. He's really taken on developing a social media strategy for us in the past month, which has been just outstanding, and I'm really happy to have him on board with that. We've been working on our Spotlight campaign, which we'll be doing with WRAL. And I think we mentioned that to the board. I wasn't at the March meeting, but in February, basically there's a writer from WRAL. We're in a contract with them, and they will write, how many pieces, Shan? Is it 6 or 7?
5 or 6. We kind of fed them ideas, and we were supposed to do this in the spring, but we've pushed it back because it's not an ideal time to do tourism marketing right now.
Right. So we've got that in place, and we're working with the staff there to get that launched, which is great. Cole has been able to put this on the Alliance's website, historichillsborough.org. We have a guided walking tour that folks can take of gardens and cemeteries in Hillsborough. And we also have a guided walking tour, an interactive guided walking tour of historic sites. So people that would otherwise be coming out for our guided walking tours, they can't do that now. So they're doing it independently. And we also have links associated with various topics. So you can see, if you're interested in, the Civil War, you can also look into Bennett Place, and you can learn about other sites relevant to a particular topic, which is really cool. And we are so I'm going by the visitor center, and this is sort of launching into my director's report a bit, but I'm going by regularly, checking on, things to make sure everything's in order, making sure we've got maps. We've gotten new maps ordered, so those have been taken around Riverwalk. I think, we're doing as much as we can with the limitations that we have on us right now. But people are still calling, they're still requesting information, so that's good. They're still wanting to know what's happening in Hillsborough. Are we having these events? So there's still interest and engagement.
A lot, which is really great. The other thing on the marketing piece, just to update this board, the Orange County Visitors Bureau wants to encourage their board and our board to spend the marketing dollars where we can once we are able to welcome people back in, and not to cut those dollars, which I think is smart. So we will still continue to try and support marketing as much as we can. The Tourism Development Authority's budget is mostly marketing. So we will do what we can there to complement what the messaging that's coming out of the visitor center with that additional money to support the overall tourism program, which is the Tourism Board and the TDA efforts. And so the TDA runs some radio ads, and so we may retool those. Again, we were supposed to run them in the spring. We held them, so we may go ahead and try and get those out in early summer to match the tagline and the marketing that we're planning on using for reopening. And we'll try and run that by everybody to make sure that it doesn't offend anybody's sensibilities or anything like that, because I think right now, when we are doing marketing and there is some uncertainty, or we're planning to do marketing when things open back up, we want to make sure that message resonates with a lot of people. That's all I had. Tourism Board staff member comments or updates?
I just wanted to personally use this time to check in on everyone and see how you're doing, how we can help you. I know many of you own businesses that are affected by this. So, I just want to check in, see how you're doing.
Who wants to go first? Barry, tell us about WITS.
Well, we're down, obviously, but in there, better than some, I might guess. So, we're still contributing. We're going to be able to make our payments to tourism, and I would suspect others are too, that the ones that are operating. But I guess the word of the day is down, but kind of treading water, maybe.
Did you receive any government funds? Have you been able, do you have all your staff or partial staff? I said, did you get any of the government funds, and are you able to keep most of your staff or just a few?
Most of our staff is young, so the parents, solved that for us. They wouldn't let their kids work. We did get into the PPP. We're trying for the second round, and that looks dismal as well. So no, I guess we have not. Of course, most of we're trying to get the shop open in Graham too, and that kind of puts, we're expecting revenue that we aren't getting, so that puts a damper on that, which is we're certainly not complaining. We're not in bad shape, but it's different. Treading water is again the best way to put it. But yeah, our staff is down, but we have been able to to fill our needs.
What about you, Tommy? Unmute.
We did receive PPP money, but we can't, you got to start using it when you get it. And that was 10 days ago, and we're not open. And 40% of people don't want to come back. So the government may extend the 8 weeks that you have to use it. I've heard hearing rumors, but I haven't seen anything definite on that. It would be nice to be able to start the use of that when we are partially open, hopefully in 4 or 5 weeks. But that's the thing too. It's like, if we go at 25%, which a lot of the states that are opening restaurants are starting at, that's 15 in our dining room. What's the point?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we make it? See, the thing about occupancy is funny to me. It has nothing to do with the size of the building, right? It has to do with how many egresses, how many emergency exits you have. So if I put 2 more doors in my front of my dining room, I could get 75 people in there. And then you follow what I'm saying? It's like, it's not, why don't we just stay 6 feet apart and forget about, percent occupancy, if that makes sense. It's, but I know it's just an easy way to make a guide for everyone. I get that. But you could get 30 people in my place easily far enough away. But, if it's only 25%, it's not going to be that. So the folks that are there are happy to have a job and happy to be there. We're fortunate that our menu is based on to-goes. Anything we make does well in a box. And so our to-goes have been great. And the community's been great. So we're fortunate that way. But yeah, can't complain too much. Like I said, it's there's a lot of folks have a lot worse than we do.
So Barney, you're muted too, but I was just curious. I asked Shannon about this earlier today. I haven't got any sense of what phase tours and that kind of thing will fall under. Have you heard anything?
No. No. Kathleen mentioned virtual tours. The tour operators online and around the world talk about all this stuff. I'm in the, I suppose, enviable position of this is if tours don't run, it's no big deal to me. It'd be nice if they ran, but they don't have to. So I haven't pushed it. I thought the virtual tour idea would both be a little more effort than maybe I necessarily needed to go through. And I think kind of ghost and history walks, that the atmosphere is kind of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see somebody like walking around with a phone or something like that, or sitting at home in their den watching me walk around. it didn't seem like a starter to me. So I don't know. I'm just waiting. I haven't actually read into the phases, so I don't know where it would go. I've just been kind of playing it by ear, doing other things, prepping for when we come back, more or less.
What about you, Billy?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of in the same boat as everybody else. We've explored all kinds of operational grants and funding from various sources. We furloughed a number of employees early on, and were able to keep the warehouse open. We didn't have Amazon orders for about 4 weeks, which was significant. Didn't mean that Amazon wasn't selling products that we had. It just meant that they weren't buying them from us. And, we've kind of, I think, reached a balance. I think the tricky part is what you guys are talking about later this year and kind of not knowing what's next. I mean, so much of what we do is tied into live music, and I don't have any confidence that anything's going to happen this year, or at least the way that it's sketched out at the moment. So I think that's, forcing us for lots of other revenue generating options. But, all things considered, I think we're doing okay, and are managing. And I think from an artistic standpoint, it's gonna be a lot of great art that comes out of this. It just may not have a home for a little while. So that's kind of our update.
Mark, why don't you talk about Hot Tin Roof, and I'll share chamber updates.
There's nothing to talk about. We're closed. We've been closed since Tuesday, March 17th, 5 o'clock. Because we don't serve food, we have gotten, we've gotten dicked so many different ways by this government, by the ABC, and by the ALE. And it's very, very disheartening.
You want to promote your mixers?
They're not my mixers.
They are very talented.
We're using it. I mean, I don't know if you've been by there. It's going to look good. I mean, the yard looks good, and when we get everything finally done, it's going to look great. We're putting a stage up. Can I say this, Kim? Without the TDA money, we're doing what we want to do. I mean, it's going to look good, but the secret, the room, the whatever, the Emperor's Naked. Right now, we all have sympathy because people feel bad for us. Come June 1st, when half the world's open and we can, like Tommy says, we can only bring 20 people in, 10 people in, we might as well just shut the doors for good, because everyone's going to expect everything then, money-wise. And when y'all were talking about the tax dollars a while ago, I think some of your estimates, we're gonna get hit for a long time on this. And it's going to have far reach. I mean, yeah, there's going to be a lot of businesses not making. And I know you asked me what Hot Tin Roof is doing, but we're trying to keep our head above water. And like I said, we're using the time to fix things up, but that's about it.
So the Hot Tin Roof applied for and got that PPP money, but it was cut back from the ask, and it wasn't a big ask in the first place. And while the federal government said you could include things like good faith estimate on tips and payroll taxes, the lender, when you're actually working with the lender, wasn't really interested in considering those things. So what we're left with, when you have to spend it in 8 weeks and 75% of it has to be on payroll and only 25 can be on rent and utilities, we actually really need the opposite because we're closed. So if we could use the money for rent and utilities, we'd be in a much better position than the ask is to spend it on payroll. And as many of you know, most of your employees don't want your payroll money because they're doing better on unemployment. So I hope that somebody mentioned here that there might be some changes in how that PPP forgiveness works out and what you're allowed to spend it on. And I truly hope that's the case, because here at the chamber, I'm hearing that same refrain over and over and over again, that it is, the restaurants are struggling to get employees to come back, that would be a real concern as you move into an occupancy and inside occupancy. They'll need to continue their curbside delivery option because they're not going to make enough off of 25% of a restaurant that only seats 30 to begin with. And they don't know that they could get the staff to run both because they can't get people to come back to work. So it's very, you know, your restaurant industry is not doing well. Your bars are closed with no option. And so you could offer, you know, reasons to come and be socially distant in Hillsborough, but I'm not sure what they'll do until we move forward with some sort of reopen. You know, I mean, I don't know how that'll benefit the tourism board and the funds that we need, as long as where the dollars are spent are crippled with the current situation. You know, on the brighter side of things, the chamber went into partnership with the Wooden Nickel, opened a fundraising campaign, and have reached the $20,000 goal and are extending it to $30,000 now, with some new incentives from WHUP, who's doing a 50-50 campaign. So if someone makes a donation to WHUP, half of it will go over to the hospitality fund. Nickel just launched a t-shirt selling campaign with a good percentage of those proceeds to go back into the campaign. And then Tom Struckmeyer with Edward Jones has his business match, you know, challenge to businesses to donate towards the cause, and he'll match their funds up to $2,500. So I think we are going to continue to try to raise money and continue to try to make these distributions until we get closer to those particular. I mean, there's some employees who are still at home, so who aren't receiving, you know, unemployment and things like that. So.
Also, on a positive note, I should have mentioned, especially since Sarah's on there, one thing I have been doing is learning tour scripts. So I think by the end of the month, I'll have the Churton Street tour patterned down, so we can debut that whenever we're ready to go. And I also have my new kids tour ready to debut. So
fantastic.
That's cool.
Thank you, Barney.
Sarah, did you have anything to add?
Me?
Mm-hmm. Or Kathleen?
You know, I think I said a lot of what I had to cover. I think that one of the things that as we're thinking about marketing, and I do want to mention, you know, looking ahead, if there are ways that, you know, that, you know, our local merchants, and Kim, you and I can talk about this more too, ways that we can specifically help market you better and more effectively. I think working really closely right now is going to be so important in our marketing plan. So, and Shannon, you know, you'll be in with that too. Please reach out. Don't hesitate to shoot me an email or call or whatnot. So.
And Kim, we didn't mention that the tourism program did partner with the chamber to do some signs just indicating that the businesses that are able to remain open, that they are. So people driving through town think that everything's closed. That's not the case. So we were able to partner. We just used a little bit of miscellaneous funds for that project.
And so right now I do have a new set of signs. Some of them say, check us out on Facebook, and some of them say, check us out on the website, on the business's website, and I'm ready to distribute those. I sent an email out today to our 84 registered merchants in the chamber, and you just ask them to indicate if they would like a sign, and so I can get those out. I also asked them if they wanted to try a Mother's Day marketplace, or kind of a virtual marketplace where you could feature gifts or gift cards or anything. And basically this is just just being thrown at the retail side, who's gotten really no additional help so far. So I'm trying to kind of help them a little bit, and we'll see if that comes to pass. And then next week, we're looking into running a bingo, like you might have seen on Facebook, where, you know, if you have receipts for these different, you know, restaurants and retail establishments, you could basically fill out your bingo card and be eligible for a gift card. Kathleen, I think you're the only one.
No, I don't know if I can add to anything that I've already said or that anyone else has already said. I know as a resident, you know, I think a lot of us are trying to patronize where we can, and where places aren't open, buying gift certificates. Mark, I think Hot Tin Roof is got a big place in my heart. I just find it very charming, and Kim, what y'all have done out there is fantastic. And so I'm wondering, in terms of marketing and supporting the chamber and what they're doing to support the local businesses, is cultivating that interest and desire to, where you can't order for curbside, also support your beloved businesses through gift certificates and so forth. And I think there's an incredibly creative number of people who are doing that. I know the Arts Council has been engaging in an online relationship with folks who clue into their social media campaigns and inviting everyone to express themselves with their inner artist, whether they have talent or not, and have fun with it. But overcoming the real trauma that's going on from the business community is what we really need to figure out here, and share ideas.
Appreciate that. I think we'll, I feel like in the next week to 10 days, with these various conversations and the governor coming back with his updates and other things that I'm aware of, I believe we're going to start to see some sort of cementing towards this is how we reopen, whether it's, 2 weeks from now is the first phase, or 2 days from now, I don't know yet, but I think we're going to know pretty soon. And I think things are starting to move. There's a member of ours did a really good workshop, and I was the only one who was there. And I told him when he jumped on, when he started the call, I said, we don't have any other participants and I got a lot on my plate. So could you just give me the 10-minute version? And an hour and a half later, I was very glad that I had spent the time. But one of the things he talked about was, how we're all in this feeling kind of frozen. And so his business is Forward Traction. And what he has and is willing to share is to help you start to identify, how do I move forward with my business? What are the things I should start doing now in preparation for reopen, and giving you some power back, which, I think that's one of the worst things about this is, with no information and no ability, no control over situation. I think for a lot of us, that's really hard. So, message me offline, send me an email, kim@hillsboroughchamber.com if you're interested. He's wanting to connect with people who are, those forward thinking, energized, ready to move, ready to do something. What can they do? So he's hoping to connect with those people. So just let me know if you're one of them, and I'll connect you.
Great. Well, thank all of you for attending. I know this is kind of strange, and I'd much rather see your faces in person.
Can't we just sit around the whole meeting room 6 feet apart? It's a big room, and there's only, 9 of us?
I think I was told that I could host like 2 or maybe up to 3 at the most. I got some kind of policy because I wasn't sure who had the technology and who didn't. You're all very tech savvy, obviously, so we didn't have to do that. but that's not always the case.
I was in a meeting the other day, last week, with 85 people on Zoom. And believe it or not, it worked very well. It worked very, I think that's our future conference and forum, template, folks. I mean, it's just, I don't know.
Shannon, I have a question for you in terms of the town's thoughts about opening public offices and when you would be going back, to be in the office, and when have you heard anything when?
So I'm in my office, but it's not a shared space. It's just a little 10 by 15 room. So there still are some people coming in to do, essential functions and things like that. I think right now we're waiting for direction from Governor Cooper to start making those plans, and the town manager will give us more information on that as it comes forward. I think that a lot of the biggest public contact office is the water bill pay office. And so I think they're putting in some measures, some safety measures, plexiglass and things like that in preparation. But as far as the date, I don't have any of that information yet.
It was good to see everybody's face. I guess till next time.
Ask for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
There's a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All the sorry. Kim moved and Barney seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. We're adjourned. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Good to see everybody.
Take care.
Bye.
Y'all
Bye-bye.
take care.
See ya.